Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to All-Star Weekend in Toronto. I know John Delapina has laid out how we're going to have our discussions with you over the next hour or so, but we're starting with some extremely exciting news. With me is, I think you all know them, Marty Walsh, the Executive Director of the National Hockey League Players Association. And to his right is Luc Tardif, who is President of the International Ice Hockey Federation. And the exciting news, although I think the IIHF broke it a little early because the ink is barely dry, we have an agreement among us and with the International Olympic Committee for NHL players to participate in the 2026 and 2030 Olympics. We know how important international competition is to our players. We know how much they love and want to represent the countries from which they're from. And we think this is a great stage for best on best, the best on best, in what obviously we all believe is the best sport. And when you look at the composition of our player base, you again understand how important international competition is. There were a lot of details to work out. I'm thrilled that our three organizations could collaborate as well as they have, and we're looking forward to moving our international agenda forward in a really big way. With that, Marty, the mic is yours.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I want to thank everyone for joining us today for this exciting announcement with the NHL, NHLPA, and the IIHF. Since I joined the PA since last February, it's been clear how much our players embrace and support the opportunity to represent their countries in the Olympics. That's one of the things as we did Fall Tour. And prior to that, players would constantly say to us, we want to play in the Olympics, we want to be in the Olympics, we want to be part of the Olympics. And today's announcement makes that a reality. As Gary said, we can officially confirm the NHL players will return to the Winter Olympics in Milano Cortina in 2026 as well as in 2030. As you all know, NHL players are the best in the world, and it's exciting to know that they'll be back on a world stage representing their countries in a best-on-best tournament. Today is also an exciting day for hockey fans, for media, for stakeholders who have regularly debates what team rosters should look like with the best players competing for their countries. And in 2026, we will get that answer. We'll get to see NHL teammates go head-to-head, top NHL players line up next to each other, and for many NHLPA members, it will be the first opportunity for them to ever play in an Olympic game. 2026 marks the 6th time that players will compete in the Olympics. We all remember the outstanding performances from gold medalists in the past like Mario Lemieux, Nicholas Lindstrom, Sidney Crosby, Carey Price, and we can't wait to see what this group of players will do in the next Olympic Games. I just want to take a moment to thank the teams that put this together. We get a chance to sit up here and announce this, but the team at the NHL, the staff that worked tirelessly to get this agreement done, the team at the IIHF who worked tirelessly to get this done, the IOC team that's here with us today, tirelessly to get it done, and I'm going to say most importantly, the NHLPA staff too. But all kidding aside, all of the people that worked on this worked extremely hard and were committed from day one to making something happen. So I want to say thank you very much. And with that, I have an opportunity to introduce Luc Tardif to say a few words.
Thank you, Mr. Executive Director, Mr. Commissioner. I think first we made it, and that's really important. That's 2 years' work, and more intense the last 6 months, I think, if I can say. But the most important thing is since 2 years we learned to work together, and I have to congratulate, like you did, Mr. Watch, the staff of NHL, the staff of NHLPA, the staff of the IHF, and the people from IOC, because now we got a new process, you got a new method for success. So that means outside of the Olympic game, why not do further? We know how to work together, and that's really important. This agreement is really important because first of all, IHF, NHL. So that means our goal is trying to grow the game all over the world. Bring the best on best player, and what is the most important competition than the Olympic Games. I think this news will make happy the young players who will have in front of them at least 2 Olympic Games, and why not 34, because it will be in a ice hockey place. So that means it will be important for all those kids and to play the Olympic game, to learn what is the Olympic spirit. And we're happy that all of us, we reach, that was not easy. That was not easy. A lot of discussion, but I think the most important thing is the success. For IHF, I think coordinate all the schedule for the next 10 years. It will be really important and for the benefit of our game. So thank you for your understanding and the work we did together. We know a little bit more together, and that was not an easy, both of us, we are not easy guy, but we made it.
Speak for yourself.
Yeah. We made it for the benefit of ice hockey level. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary, Marty, and Luke. We can now take questions. Again, I ask if we can focus on the Olympics. Raise your hand. We'll get a handheld mic to you. Steve Wino.
Steve Wino, Associated Press. Gary, you've expressed concerns recently, I guess, about the arena construction in Milan. I guess, have all your kind of concerns been satisfied in terms of coming to this agreement?
Thank you. Some people have suggested that was a negativity about the Olympics. It wasn't. It was really intended to be a wake-up call for the organizing committee. We have been given assurances that the building will be ready, and we're relying on those assurances. But there's a lot of construction that remains to be done on that building. I think they only recently started, but we're being told by everybody that not to worry. But I like to worry. So we'll see.
Pierre, front right.
Pierre LeBrun, TSN, The Athletic. 2 questions, if I may. One for all of you. What were the major issues in your mind that you had to overcome to get the Olympic deal done? And secondly, where does Russia stand, do you think, heading into the 26 Olympics as far as still being banned from competition or not?
The latter question, Luke, you have to answer, because that's not something within our purview.
Yeah. First, I will start with the second question. First of all, we about the a possible comeback of Russia and Belarus. We always said year by year we'll take a decision for the year coming. So that's why at the beginning we expected the better geopolitical situation, and our decision, that's only a question of security. So next week we're going to have a council meeting, and we're going to take a decision about the future World Championship, who will be held in Sweden and Denmark. So we will have to answer this question. Is it possible in the geopolitical situation on a safety environment to bring back the Russian and Belarus? That's the answer we're going to have for the year coming. After that, about the Olympic game, the qualification round will come closely because in August, September, Belarus is involved. And by the ranking, Russia is already qualified. But can we treat both separately? That's a question the council will have to answer. So you will know a little bit much better next week about the decision of IHF.
As it relates to the first question, there were a lot of things that we've worked out in previous Olympics, rules, officiating, accommodations, and the like. I wasn't worried about those things. The big issues were the big ticket items: who is going to pay for the insurance, who is going to pay for the travel, and who is going to pay for the players and their families. From our standpoint, it was really when the Players Association got comfortable that the players were going to be treated appropriately, that we were going to be comfortable going. Once we were told that the big ticket items were going to be paid for and that the players would be insured and traveled appropriately. You want to weigh in? Who's paying, Luke?
That,
Not us.
that's a team effort. First, that's a team effort, and that's the most difficult problem. So that means, for 2030, we don't know what will be the insurance. We don't know. So that means we will have to in the middle of the road to readjust our. But anyway, that's not possible. That the player are not covered, and first. That's the job of IHF, but that's a team effort because IOC organization committee help us on different way to answer all the questions sent by NHLPA and NHL for this topic.
And we have, as you know, new leadership in the PA, myself and Ron Hainsey. And when we looked at international hockey, we asked Rob Zepp to take over international hockey. So there were some new players at the table for us. So, you know, at the end of the day, you look back and say, it was a great collaboration. Obviously, to get to the final, it can be complicated. And, you know, the challenges were there. But our team and all the teams, as I said earlier, did a great job working together collectively.
Let me just add one thing, particularly for the NHL owners that are listening. The fact of the matter is, our agreement is we're not responsible for any of the major costs, the big ticket items. How the IIHF raises the funds, whether it's from the IIHF or the organizing committee or the IOC for 30, that will be their issue, not ours. And I want to be clear about that. And since we're giving shout outs, this agreement doesn't come to fruition without Deputy Commissioner Bill Daly's tireless work on that behalf, plus the people that worked with him on our staff.
Maybe I should add that also a part of the insurance will be covered, that we share will be covered by Olympic Committee of each country and also Federation of each country. So that means that's the way we find a way to cover everything. There is a new things coming because now since January we've got a professional female, so that means that's brand new, so we will have to also cover the insurance because that's a brand new situation, but we already anticipate that.
Good. Third row on the right, Steve Simmons.
Gary, Steve Simmons, Toronto Sun. You talk about the owners who are listening and even those who aren't right now. There's been a historical reluctance among the people who've owned franchises in your league to participate in the Olympic Games. How did you convince them at this time to go back to the Games after the ownership seemed to be going in the other direction?
That's a really good question, and there are no simple answers, but I'll try and give you one. There is a recognition of how important this is to the players, and in the spirit of cooperation, particularly the work that we did together during COVID, everybody felt on our side that it was the right thing to do. In addition, that we can all have the discussion about growing the game and the profile and all that. This really came down to doing something because the players really wanted it.
Mark Lazarus, The
Back
Athletic.
on the right, Mark Lazarus.
Given the arena is just starting to be under construction, is there any push to make it an NHL-size rink instead of the wider Olympic ice?
Yeah, there is a new rule now in IHF about first our top heaven. So we will use NHL size, and that will be the case in Torino, not in Torino, in Milano. So that means now that's the size, even if NHL was not there the last 2 Olympic Games. So for a lot of reasons, we think that's a more spectacular size for ice hockey. So in Torino, it will be NHL size.
Unless I'm misremembering, I think that started back in Vancouver. We were on NHL ice.
Yeah.
In front, Kevin McGrath.
Gary, I know a stumbling block for you with the Olympics in the past has been the ability to use the video on your own website. Has that been resolved to your satisfaction?
The discussions are constructive and positive enough that we think we'll have enough content access better than we've had in the past. That's one of those things that we'll work our way through, but in order for us to be able to participate in 2026, we couldn't resolve dot every I and cross every T, but on the big items that were essential, we were able to do that, and the other things that we'll work out, but I think we're in a better position than we were the last time we participated.
Josh, you have a question? You done? Anybody else? Oh, go ahead. Third row on the left.
Hey, Alex Silverman, Sports Business Journal. I know the location of 2030 hasn't been officially announced, but it looks like France and Salt Lake City for 2034. Was having some level of knowledge of where those are going to be, was that a factor at all?
Not really. In the final analysis, we wanted to be back with our players in the Olympics, and the Olympics is going to select among a number of places, all of which I think are pretty desirable.
Maybe I can give more information about that because that's in France. And at the moment, the decision of the organization of the Olympic Games in France, it will be settled on the executive committee of IOC in Paris on, I think that's just before the Olympic Games. But now we know that first there is only one last candidate, so it will be in France. And the location will be, everybody was going to be happy, that's in south of France. And all the figure skating, speed skating, and ice hockey will be in Nice.
That sounds nice.
Are there any other Olympic questions? Nope. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
On to President Tardif, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay, and Marty and Gary are going to stay here with us. We're going to bring, you stay, we're bringing chairs. Yep. Good so far. Good. Ready? Yep. You good? Oh, they have microphones? Okay. Okay, please welcome to the stage. Well, we're going to go in a different order. From the Edmonton Oilers, forward and representing Canada, Connor McDavid. From the Carolina Hurricanes, forward and representing Finland, Sebastian Aho. From the United States and the Toronto Maple Leafs, Austin Matthews. And from the Vancouver Canucks and Sweden, Elias Pettersson. And NHL Network host, Jamison Coyle.
So we're excited to make a second announcement today with the NHL. Next February, the NHLPA and the NHL will host the Four Nations Face-Off featuring the top NHL players from Canada, the United States, Sweden, and Finland. This tournament will take place in two cities, one in Canada, one in the United States. As I mentioned in our prior announcement on the Olympics, NHL players are the best players in the world who crave competition and an opportunity to measure their game against their peers. This marks a new era for international hockey, which will start with NHL players from our four strong hockey nations competing against one another in a mid-season tournament, and we have no doubt they will produce exceptionally compelling hockey for fans and stakeholders all across the world. NHL players are certainly thrilled about the opportunity to represent their countries, and we know that players involved will put on a great showcase of their talent for 1 year from now in the Four Nations Face-Off. We view this event as a building block to a larger World Cup, an important tournament to the players. We are pleased to have the Olympic agreement complete, as we mentioned earlier today, and now we can turn our focus towards finalizing the World Cup schedule. I'd like to this opportunity again to thank the team at the NHL, Deputy Commissioner Bill Daly and his team, the team at the NHLPA, Rob Zepp and his team, and it's been exciting to have these conversations. These guys that are on the stage here today, every one of them either talked to me or Ron personally saying this is what we want to get international hockey back into the NHL. And this couple of global series is truly, we have an amazing opportunity. So I want to say thank you, and it's my honor to bring to the podium Commissioner Gary Bettman.
Thank you, Marty. What I'll briefly add to what Marty has said is our intention in terms of an international calendar is to go to the Olympics in 2026, 2 years later play a World Cup, 2 years after that go to the Olympics in 2030, and 2 years after that play a World Cup. That's the cycle we want to get on. We both collectively, our organizations, know a lot about putting on events, this weekend being a good example. And it's a major undertaking to do an international competition on relatively short notice, and we're only about a year out. So the notion was, let's do a little bit of international competition as a bit of an appetizer for the schedule that I just laid out. And so we'll play the Four Nations tournament. We're going to play some games in Canada, some games in the United States. Locations have yet to be finalized, but our view was this was a great way to kick off the calendar that we've agreed upon and that I've just outlined. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jameson and the stars of the show.
Commissioner, Marty, thank you very much. Guys, thank you for being here. We know it's a busy weekend for you. Commissioner, I want to start with you. We've had Olympics and other international events in the past, but how did the Four Nations face-off come to be?
We understood the anxiety and anxiousness of everybody to get started, and understanding both the schedule we were working on, and as I said, we only, the ink's still drying on the Olympic agreement that was signed this morning. We felt that we wanted to do something, but we couldn't get ready in a year for a full-blown World Cup. This gets us started and puts us on a schedule that I think everybody is not just excited about, but really comfortable with.
Marty, we have 4 players up here from 4 different countries. How did these 4 countries get chosen for this event?
Well, we were putting the list together to see where we can have it, how we can do it, and ultimately we had conversations internally talking to players, and we settled on these 4 countries. There's other countries that would want to be here, but as the commissioner just mentioned, we didn't have enough time to be able to put a bigger tournament on. So we were able to just look at the four countries. We were in Sweden this year for the global series. We were playing. There's other teams in this league, other players that are a little upset that they're not sitting on the stage right now. But 2026, 2028, 2030, 2032, there'll be plenty of opportunity.
Connor, I know you've publicly said you've been hoping for something like this for a while now. It's finally here. What's it going to be like for you to represent Canada?
Yeah, just the opportunity to do that is a dream come true. Obviously I've been vocal about this. I feel like it's important for hockey as we continue to try to grow our game internationally and at home. I think it's a great thing. It's an exciting schedule, something that people can look forward to. Every 2 years, every second year. It's something that I know the 4 of us are super pumped about, and obviously the Four Nations Cup. It's going to be exciting. 4 great teams that are going to be competing, and I can't wait.
Austin, you get to represent the United States for the first time as an NHLer. What is that going to be like?
Yeah, it means a lot. Obviously, at any level to represent your country, it's a big honor. So, at a world stage like the Olympics or the Four Nations Cup, competing against the best players in the NHL in their respective countries. I think it'll be great for the players and obviously great for the sport and the fans. I think we'll really enjoy it.
Sebastian, international events back where you're from are a big deal. What do you think the reaction back in Finland is like right now hearing this news?
I'm sure people from Finland and all over Europe are pumped to hear these news, and obviously the players and whoever get to be part of this is great stuff. I mean, our generation hasn't been able to do that as an NHL player, so I'm very pumped, and I know there's a lot of people from back home who are very happy to hear this.
Elias, you've had the chance to represent Sweden on the international stage. Describe that moment, what that feels like.
It's special. I mean, you get to represent your country. You got a whole country behind you, so it's special, and I'm very excited for this announcement. And yeah.
Sebastian, you're from Finland. Of the 4 countries represented here on stage, much smaller population, yet in these international events, you guys always show up and usually do quite well. What's the secret to that?
I can't tell you, you know.
You can tell me, you can't tell these guys.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I think every time, I think it's the whole nation is behind you, and like the team is, you know, bonding it very well, and it's just, I don't really know. I don't really know what it is, but I always enjoyed going whenever I had the chance to play for Team Finland.
Elias, I'll go back to you on this one. We always love a good rivalry in sports, whether it's in the NHL or at an international event. You've got Sebastian Aho over there, Finland, Sweden. You've been in that rivalry. Take me on the ice. What makes that one so special?
Yeah, it's a rivalry going far back in the days. Easiest way to put it is what Sweden and Finland is to us is what Canada and US is. So.
Austin, USA Hockey is on the rise, more and more so each and every year, just churning out better and better talents right into the NHL. How do you think Team USA stacks up against the world these days?
I mean, I think they stack up pretty good. I mean, I think all 4 countries, you know, being represented here, you know, I think it's all very, very close. Like anybody can beat anybody, and there's amazing players on both sides. So I think that's, you know, the really exciting part about being able to compete in these tournaments and in the Olympics is that you know, the discrepancy between teams is very close. So it'll make for really competitive games and competitive tournaments.
Connor, the last time we had something like this was the World Cup of Hockey in Toronto, and you and Austin were actually on the same team, Team North America. What's it going to be like going head-to-head against him this time around?
Yeah, this All-Star game feels a little bit like a U23 reunion with the number of players who have gone on to compete in this All-Star game. So obviously going up against Austin, you know, I know really well. It's never easy, and to do it on the Olympic stage, World Cup stage, 4 Nations Cup, it's going to be exciting. Obviously Canada, US, doesn't get any better than that in hockey, and just can't wait to have a chance to be a part of that.
It's going to be a lot of fun for sure. Guys, we appreciate your time. We know you're busy. You got to get ready for a skills competition coming up later on tonight, so we're going to let these guys go. We're going to take a quick break here. When we do come back, the commissioner and the deputy commissioner will take the stage and will be available to the media. So, thank you.
Good afternoon again. And while we've already shared our international developments with you, we do have some more to discuss. And Bill Daly and I are here to do that. Last night we got the 2024 NHL All-Star Weekend off to a terrific start in front of a packed house at Scotiabank Arena. We shined the spotlight on many of the most talented women players in the world. We paid tribute to one of the most storied teams in NHL history, and we brought back the NHL Tim Hortons All-Star Player Draft to enable our great players and some of their famous friends to show off their team building skills. Tonight we are excited to unveil a retooled NHL skills competition presented by DraftKings Sportsbook that will use 8 events to crown 1 all-around skills champion and 1 goaltender. And tomorrow afternoon, we'll drop the puck on the 68th NHL All-Star Game. Our many, many thanks to Larry Tannenbaum, Brendan Shanahan, the entire Maple Leafs organization for their hospitality this weekend, and to the city and the fans of Toronto for your remarkable passion for our game, which is on display not only this weekend, but frankly every day of the year. The NHL probably could never give back to Toronto all that the city has given our league over the last 107 years, but this week and throughout the weekend, it has been our honor to connect with thousands of fans, from our game, and youth players at dozens of community events all around the GTA. I personally dropped by the Hockey Equality Clinic yesterday at Nathan Phillips Square, where an impressive, diverse group of elite girl hockey players were coached on and off the ice by Angela James, Bernice Carnegie, Soroya Tinker, Anthony Stewart, and Mark Frazier. I was at the United by Hockey Mobile Museum, and we donated with the V Foundation and the NHLPA $800,000 for brain tumor research at Princess Margaret Cancer Center. I stopped by the Fan Fest, which was active, fun, and packed. So it's a good thing, and if you haven't been there, please stop by. At this, the traditional halfway point of our season, by every measure and metric, our game and the business of our game are strong, in most cases stronger than they've ever been. And all of these things, as you hear me say repeatedly, are definitely connected. One nugget, I believe, captures how far our game has come and how impactful our overall system has been. The leading goal scorers for the NHL for the entire 2003-2004 season scored 41 goals. At the All-Star break this season, Austin Matthews already has 40 goals. When you look at our ratings, you look at our attendance, you look at the activation by our business partners, they are growing, and they are growing strongly, and it's great to see. Why? Our games are entertaining and unpredictable. Our players are dazzling and seem to come up with new ways each night to amaze us. And this weekend, we are delighted to celebrate the best of our game in a city that treasures our game. Now, before Deputy Commissioner Bill Daly and I take your questions, I want to discuss recent developments relating to the 2018 Canadian World Junior Team. I want to talk about this up front because I'm going to tell you everything that I believe I can say or is appropriate to say. I want to be clear, from the moment we first learned about this on May 26, 2022, I have repeatedly used the words abhorrent, reprehensible, horrific, and unacceptable to describe the alleged behaviors. And those words continue to apply. Given the events of last week, I believe further context on our process and overall timeline is important. We made a commitment to, and did in fact launch, an external investigation into the 2018 incident. This task was complex because of a variety of factors, not the least of which was that our authority had limitations, the volume of information, the passage of time, and the fact that other investigations were going on at the same time, specifically the reopened investigations of both Hockey Canada and the London Police Service. These three investigations, the two that I just named and ours, proceeded on separate and distinct paths. Our investigation took approximately 12 months to complete the investigatory stage. Our investigators reviewed volumes of information and conducted interviews of all players on the 2018 team, as well as other relevant individuals who were willing to participate in the investigation. We had concluded the investigatory portion of our process to the extent we could, and we were working with the NHL Players Association to analyze the information we had, create a process to move forward, and then determine what was an appropriate response when the news of the impending charges broke last week. We had heard similar rumors before about the possibility of charges, none of which had come to fruition. And in this instance, we did not have advance notice from the London authorities. As stated, these investigations were separate from one another. While there are reports of indictments, we have not received official confirmation from the London authorities that 5 players have been or will be indicted, although it appears from reports that they will be. As such, and if charges are pending, it would be inappropriate to provide further comment on the matter. Finally, as I think everyone knows, all of the NHL players who appear to be subject of indictment are no longer with their teams, and so at this stage, the most responsible and prudent thing for us to do is await the conclusion of the judicial proceedings, at which point we will respond as appropriate at the time. To reiterate, this is the full extent of what I'm comfortable sharing, and anything else would either be speculative or, as I've said before, inappropriate. And with that, we will take questions. Yes. Can you identify yourself, please?
Wait.
How about a mic over
Yeah,
here?
let's, hold on.
So this investigation was done 12 months ago?
No, it took 12 months. It hasn't been done for a year.
Did the results of the investigation find any wrongdoing on the part of the players?
I'm not going to comment on the substance of the investigation in light of what I just said.
Once it was finished, why didn't you announce the results of the investigation?
Because we were in the process of processing it and working with the Players Association as to how best to use the information to move forward.
So that would have been about 7 months ago, if I'm doing math off the top of my head?
Less than that.
About how long ago would you say?
We started conversing with the Players Association in the fall. Let's be clear about something. This was a complicated investigation. It's taken us about the same amount of time to get to this point as it took the London Police Service, and this was the second time they were investigating it. If you recall, the first 2 investigations by Hockey Canada and the London Police were, shall we say, inconclusive. And so our timeline, I think, was appropriate and prudent under all of the circumstances.
If you're having conversations in the fall...
Are we having a personal interview, or are we going to open the floor to somebody else?
Okay, I'll ask one more question and then we can open the floor. Thanks. What kind of conversations do you think should be happening within hockey households right now in the wake of what we've seen the last week?
That is a great question. I think it's important for people to understand that this is not... What happened, and I'll repeat the words, are abhorrent, disgusting, whatever you want to call it in terms of the allegations that have been made. This is not typical of NHL players. These players weren't NHL players in the league playing games at the time this incident, alleged incident, took place. And we are committed, and we do this through programs that we administer for our players, whether it's the Rookie Orientation Program or the annual programs for education and counseling that we put on for our players. This is not representative, these allegations, of what takes place in our game. And we're committed to setting the right example and cooperating with hockey organizations at all levels, particularly the youth level, to make sure the message in terms of what is appropriate conduct is delivered. We want people to know that our game is inclusive, welcoming, and safe.
And back on the right, Gary.
Wait a minute. You want to add anything?
Oh, sorry.
Nope. Okay. Good.
Thank you. Commissioner Simon Dingley from CBC News. Will the players who have been charged be allowed to return to play before there is a trial, or could they be out inactive for years?
Well, they're away from their teams now, and they're all free agents. As a personal matter, if I were them, I would be focusing on defending themselves, assuming the charges come down. And I would be surprised if they're playing while this is pending.
And sir, what, Mike's dead, sorry, sir.
That's okay.
What words would you have for the young woman who was allegedly assaulted in this incident?
I think we have to let the process play itself out. And was her absolute right, we were not able to interview her. And so, there's no fault there. She was absolutely within her rights not to talk to us, and we respect that, but that impacts also how the investigation had complexity to it. Thank you.
Front on the left.
Steve Wino, Associated Press. Just a quick follow-up. Those players are free agents now, or at the end of this season, and they will be free agents?
Well, they're all on leave from their teams now. All of them either don't have contracts or their contracts will expire at the end of this season.
And to the point of waiting for judicial proceedings, I guess, Bill, with the investigation itself, are you guys now planning to release your findings of the investigation at some point in the near future or after the proceedings are done in London?
No, we won't be releasing anything while these charges are pending, and we're going to monitor the process closely, obviously.
There is a serious judicial process that looks like it's unfolding, and we didn't, while we were doing our investigation, want to interfere with what the London Police Service was doing, and we're not going to do anything to interfere or influence the judicial proceedings. We're all going to have to see how that plays out, and as I said in my remarks, we will then be in a position to respond appropriately, which we will do.
Pierre in the front.
Pierre LeBrun, TSN, The Athletic. Gary and Bill, was there any consideration, or how much consideration was there given to the idea of not allowing the players to continue to play once the information was piling up in your investigation?
You're assuming that we were in a position to make a final conclusion at the time, and remember, we're dealing with something that's now 6 years old. Okay, this is something in terms of how we deal with these players. We inherited it. In the final analysis, most of the time, virtually all of the time they were playing, we did not know for sure whether or not the allegations were sustainable.
Questions? Hand up. Go ahead, Steve. Third row.
Continue on, because I'm not asking about this. I'm asking about something else.
We can change topics. It's okay.
Are you sure?
Give him the mic back.
The initial lawsuit named 8 players. The London police have focused on 5. Presumably, the investigation went outside the scope of just 5. So that process only concerns 5. What about the remaining players that may or may not have been involved?
We don't know exactly what the judicial process is going to be. As I indicated in my remarks, we interviewed all of the players from that team.
That's Steve.
Sorry to interrupt, Gary. Steve Simmons, Toronto Sun. You do business in the NHL with DraftKings and with FanDuel and with other betting organizations. In this province...
Licensed betting organizations.
Yes,
licensed by the government.
Yes, in this province, those organizations that you do business with, if you are too successful, they will cut you off. If you lose, they will take all of your money. Are you aware of this, number one, and your thoughts on that?
I had never heard that they cut you off. That's something we'll have to take a look at.
On the left, Corey.
I don't have any insight on that.
No, that's the first I've heard, but if you have examples, you can give us offline. I'd love to hear them. Yes.
Corey Massasak, the Denver Post. Speaking of the 2018 Canadian team, they have been ineligible to play in international events. 2 of them are here, Cale Makar and Robert Thomas. Are they eligible to play in this Four Nations tournament and the Olympics?
Well, I understand that all of the players who've been ruled ineligible are appealing that. So that's really an issue for Hockey Canada. Kim?
Well, it's an issue for Hockey Canada, but in this tournament is our tournament. It would be our eligibility rules, not Hockey Canada's.
Commissioner, if one of the teams...
Elliot, I know who you are, but everybody else has to identify themselves, and you should too.
Nobody else does.
Elliot Friedman of Sportsnet.
Who?
If one of the teams wants to terminate a contract of a player who is charged, will they be able to do so?
It becomes irrelevant in terms of the timing. They're all away from their teams on leave, and they're all free agents. They won't be under contract after this season anyway.
But like say next week or...
You need, in order to terminate a contract successfully, you need to be able to prove certain things.
Josh on the right.
Gary, just going back to 2022, what's your opinion or your view of how Hockey Canada handled this from the beginning?
I don't think it's appropriate for me to be critiquing how another organization does business. I can only focus on what I think we need to do. And whatever Hockey Canada is, mics are good. Whatever it was then, obviously they've retooled and restaffed and have new leadership. So that's really probably a question best directed to those currently in charge of Hockey Canada.
Mark Lazarus, The Athletic. Following up on what Elliot was asking, are you satisfied with the way the Blackhawks handled the Corey Perry termination? And are you comfortable with him re-signing pretty quickly with the Oilers?
He took a little time away, but yeah, I think there's a grievance pending, actually. He doesn't believe that they had the right to terminate him. In the final analysis, clubs will decide what they're comfortable with to a certain extent and what they're not. And in this case, the Blackhawks decided it was best if he was away from the team. I don't have any problem with what the Blackhawks did.
Yes, there was a grievance filed, yes.
Yeah.
Actually,
So,
that's not true. That's not true. We told their time to file a grievance, but a grievance has been threatened. That's what I'll say.
threatened. Are we having mic? Can everybody hear us?
Yeah.
No, it's Steve Wino's turn over here.
Gary and Bill, where do things stand with the Arizona Coyotes and an arena situation, and at what point do you guys at the league need a decision on that one way or the other?
There's nothing new. Alex Morello is focused on one piece of property, and we're focused with him on what that timeline is. And my guess is that's something that'll be addressed in the next few weeks in terms of the timeline.
Gary, I know that you referred to the fact that the 4 NHL players in question are free agents, but that's not till June 30th. I mean, depending on what is announced by London Police on Monday, is it not within the league's discretion, depending on what's announced, to suspend the players without pay for the rest of the year?
I don't think that's necessary at this stage. This is, as I've said repeatedly, a fairly complicated jurisprudential matter. The fact that they're away from their teams and not playing, I'm comfortable with. They've been paid the vast bulk of their salary for the year anyway. We're coming down to the stretch run of when compensation is paid to players. That's not the concern. The concern is to get this right.
Jamie Ross, Globe and Mail. Are the players currently being paid?
Yes.
Larry Brooks, the New York Post. Russia's obvious.
Nice to see you at an event.
Nice to see you too. Russia's obviously excluded from or not included in the Four Nations event. I'm wondering what the thought process was on that going in.
Well, I think we've been pretty open about the fact that we don't condone or support the aggression in Ukraine, and really as a result of that. But we support our Russian players, and we certainly don't hold what's going on geopolitically against our individual Russian players. But we thought, given the totality of the circumstances, where the IOC is, where the IIHF is, that it probably wasn't the right time to include the Russians as a team.
Renaud on the right.
Renaud Lavoie, TVA Sport. Just a question regarding the All-Star Game. You announced a lot of international events in the last few minutes. What's the future of the All-Star Game? Are we going to see some, even if we have more international events?
We're currently in discussions with the Players Association on that. We're expecting, subject to those discussions, to have not an all-star game next year when we do the four-nation face-off, but using the all-star game as a send-off to the Olympics, and then, assuming we're in sync on that, determining how well that works and seeing if that's the formula going forward.
Josh Clipper of the Canadian Press.
Just going back to Hockey Canada and the investigation, in your investigation, are you or will you share information from your investigation with the London police?
Well, we to the extent we're legally compelled to do it, obviously, we do have certain obligations legally on what we can share and what we can't share from that investigation, absent legal compulsion.
Kevin McGran, Toronto Star. Gary, what can you tell us about your meeting with people in Utah about the future of hockey there?
They're very enthused about the possibility of getting an NHL team. They made it clear they'd like one. And the governmental leaders in Utah have expressed to us a similar level of enthusiasm. We're not looking at the moment at either. And what Utah, what Ryan Smith has expressed an interest in is an expansion. I know where that question was going, but that's not what this is about right now. Yeah. What? What about it? Okay, if somebody wants to express interest and tell us they want an expansion team, we'll talk to them as we talk to people in Houston, in Atlanta, in Cincinnati, Kansas City. There seems to be a increasing and vibrant expression of interest in having an NHL team in places where there aren't.
Steve?
Steve Simmons, Toronto Sun. You have a Four Nations tournament coming next year without Nikita Kucherov, without Leon Draisaitl, without Pasternak, without 4 or 5 of the best goalies in the world. Are you comfortable looking at those players, some of the greatest players in your game today, and saying, we're doing something, by the way, you're not involved?
The answer to the question is, the way you're phrasing it, we either do all or nothing. And we couldn't do all on the time frame, and we decided it was better not to do nothing.
Robin?
Hi, Robin Doolittle, Globe and Mail.
We got that.
Okay, great. I just wanted to be careful.
That's okay.
At the conclusion of whatever happens in the court process, will the NHL at that point release the report, even if there's a scenario in which these individuals are no longer playing in the NHL or have prospects of playing in the NHL, if that were to occur?
That's a really good question, and there are, as Bill said, constraints on what information we can and can't release under any circumstance. And that's something, depending on what happens in the judicial process, we'll have to take a look at. And that may depend on what actions we think we may or may not need to take.
'Cause if I understand the process correctly, is there'd be a report and then hearings if there are any findings. So the idea of holding hearings to people who are not in the league anymore, is that the issue?
I'm not sure the way you phrased the question is exactly the way I understand it, so let me try it this way. Players, before they're disciplined, are generally entitled to due process and hearings. What transpires in the judicial proceedings may have to some extent an impact on what we choose to do or not do.
Thanks. Greg Wyshynski, ESPN. I think that was the first time we might have heard the Cincinnati as someone interested in joining the NHL family.
Actually, I got an email from Omaha, Nebraska.
Specifically Cincinnati, how would you characterize those discussions?
Early.
Very preliminary. I mean, what's happening is people are expressing an interest. We have no formal expansion process set up. We're not envisioning what we did in prior times where we say, if you want a team, here's the date, submit your application. We're listening to the expressions of interest, and I think it's fair to say that the Utah expression of interest has been the most aggressive and has carried a lot of energy with it, including from the governor and leaders of the legislature.
Gary, obviously it's understood that that the players were junior hockey players and under the umbrella of Hockey Canada when the alleged incident occurred. But in the larger scope, the NHL has the biggest impact and influence on the sport. And I'm just curious, your views on, systemic culture issues in the sport or where the sport is right now.
I think any characterization that this is a systemic issue is both inaccurate and unfair. 99.9% of the players, certainly in our league, conduct themselves appropriately. Hockey players and hockey families throughout our ecosystem, throughout the world at all levels, overwhelmingly conduct themselves appropriately. And to take a handful of players in this or other situations and use those allegations and condemn a particular sport, I don't think is reflective of what we are. Having said that, and I said it before in response to a question, we believe that we can set the right tone and that we do, that we work with Hockey Canada and USA Hockey, whether it's the Respect program with Sheldon Kennedy, to make sure that there's counseling, education, and that people associated with this game understand what is expected of them and what certainly is not to be tolerated. And I think overwhelmingly that's the case. And if you're associated with this game, either as a young player or the family of a young player, we believe you can and should be comfortable that this game has every intention of being welcoming, inclusive, and safe as an environment for people to participate. And we will continue our efforts to make sure that that's the case.
Kristen, over on the right.
Kristen Shelton with ESPN. Are you able to provide an update on the league's RSN situation, especially as it pertains to Diamond and their proceedings, and including streaming rights going forward as well?
Do we have an hour to answer that question? Obviously, the RSN industry is in a state of flux. And there are a lot of negotiations with creditors and stakeholders throughout the Diamond system, whether it's Diamond or Sinclair or the clubs in 3 different sports. We're part of those negotiations. We're trying to be constructive in having something sensible emerge from this, but we're also prepared as a backup if anything goes awry, that the games can be produced and delivered to fans on some basis immediately if we have to do that. We're hoping we don't. I believe that in the next couple of months this will all come to a head in one way or another, and we'll know what direction we're handling in. Obviously, there have been reports that Amazon is involved as well, and so that added a new dimension and layer to the possibilities. And I think in the first instance, Diamond is going to have to sort out what they believe their future can look like, and then we'll be in a position to respond. Now, some of our clubs have already gone in another direction and made other arrangements, including showing games over the air in places like Las Vegas and Arizona. So this is something that's going to evolve over time as the regional sports industry shakes itself out and evolves. Thank you.
Robin?
The identities of the players who may have been involved have been known for a while, and particularly, I understand, within the league. To what extent do you know whether teams were making maybe strategic decisions based on what may or may not be happening?
I don't know what the teams may or may not have been doing, but they were no better informed than we were on what was going on.
And less informed, actually.
Nope. Yeah, that's right. Okay,
They-
that's a better way to say it.
They had no access to any of the information regarding the report, so they were really flying in the dark for the entire part of that process. The only things they may have known is what the players may have told them.
And they weren't getting ongoing reports from us at all. In fact, we were not communicating with them in terms of what was going on as the investigation was unfolding.
Were there any conversations that were happening within teams?
None. By the way, one other thing. In your report today, Camille Olson, who is the independent investigator, this isn't the first time we've used her. We had used her many, many times prior to this engagement, and always found her to be very meticulous, very professional, very thoughtful in what she does, and we don't think we could have hired anybody better to do that.
On the aisle on the left.
Leah Merrill, PHNX Sports. If the Morello Group does not secure an arena in Arizona in timely fashion, what's the next step on the league's behalf?
Alex Morello, as recently as last week, told me he was certain he was going to get this done, and I don't make it a practice of contradicting owners unless I have hard facts to the contrary, and I'm both hopeful that and reasonably confident that he's going to do what he says.
Commissioner Simon Dingley from CBC, sir. You mentioned Atlanta a few minutes ago. Why Atlanta again?
Why don't you ask the people who are expressing the interest? I didn't announce that we just granted a franchise there. My guess is the people who are expressing an interest will tell you that the Atlanta of the last two incarnations isn't the same Atlanta, and they're also talking about a building in a different place. You know, what they point to is the baseball team doing much better since it moved to the northern suburbs. I'm only repeating, I'm not laying out their case, I'm only telling you what they've said. So the answer is Atlanta maybe not, Atlanta, who knows? You've jumped too far ahead on that.
Okay. Do you understand the frustration of Canadian hockey fans that there's not an additional franchise, say, in Quebec City?
You know, if we decide to expand and Quebec City expresses the type of interest necessary to make it happen, then we'll review it.
I think they want a team.
That's okay. Lots of places want a team, you know. And of all the places that have expressed an interest in wanting a team, last I checked, at least as of 5 minutes ago, none of them have one yet.
Go back to Larry on the aisle.
Hi, Larry Brooks. I'm curious. You didn't give any information to the teams, and I guess that was consistent with the way the Shane Pinto incident unfolded. Why aren't teams deserving of information so they can make more educated decisions on whether they want to sign a player, whether they want to trade for a player? Why don't you keep them up to date?
Because we don't deal in speculation. We try to deal in facts. And before we ruin a player's career, we want to have some degree of certainty as to what we're doing. And so, you know, there are lots of things that come to our attention that never materialize. And so before we go off on some tangent, we want to make sure that there's a basis for what we're doing. And when we get to such a level, then clubs get advised. And by the way, in the Pinto case, I believe that they knew before ultimately a decision was made at some point that there was an issue. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Yeah. No. I mean,
yes.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it was a league investigation, right? And we do this in accordance with the rules under the CBA and our relationship with the Players Association, and disclosure of incomplete investigations isn't really the way we do business.
In fairness to everybody involved, because allegations can get made, and sometimes when you look into it, there's no substance there. I'm not referring to any particular case right now. I'm just saying in general. So we try to be cautious. We try to respect due process. We try to respect the collective bargaining agreement and take into account all the interests that are appropriate.
Jackie in the second row.
Jackie Spiegel, Philadelphia Inquirer. Is the league looking into setting any policies moving forward with scandals such as like Hockey Canada, and how will they, you implement policies regarding that?
I think we have policies. When there are allegations of conduct that are inappropriate, and you can't spell out everything that is inappropriate. A lot of it's common sense. We look into it, and if there's something to it, we pursue it and deal with it.
But there's no overall.
Well, yes, there's the Constitution, there's the bylaws, there's a standard player contract. If you do something that is violative of the law or reflects badly on the league and doesn't show the appropriate moral conduct, then we pursue it and deal with it.
Any other questions? I don't believe so.
Thank you all for being here. Enjoy the weekend.